So back to SPQR, and here we're looking at the Battle of Castrum album. This is going to be using the Beneventum map again, mainly because there's a fort and the terrain's kind of rough. It probably doesn't represent anything specific, but then again, even the ones where we know where the battle happened, it's sometimes hard to determine what the ground actually looked like this far back in the past. This is a situation where the Romans are under Publius Scipio, the proconsul, are trying to make their way back after after Trebia, but let's see in Spain what's going on here. I don't know. This is part of the withdrawal that was going on that we saw earlier. Anyway, it's not a situation of surprise. What's happening is this Roman column is trying to make its way back to the fort. If it makes it back, it's fine. If it holds the field, it's fine, obviously. It's facing, and this is just one legion, well, one double legion, and it's facing basically a mixed force, primarily cav, a few light infantry, some elephants, some slingers. Not too different from a regular Carthaginian force. A little smaller though. Heavy in the cav still. We got really two big cav commands here. Just none of the big infantry or anything, just some lights scattered about. And the Romans' goal is to cut through them and make it to the fort. And as they get closer, they're going to have these Scorpios protecting them. If they drive the Carthaginians off the field, that's great and all. The loss levels on this one are 45 tactical quality for Carthage, 63 for the Romans. The Romans have a bigger, better force, but probably the biggest thing that's going to face them is the command issue. Without being set up already in a battle formation, they're not really in a position to fight this battle. They've been marching, they're kind of in column, and we're going to kind of see what the effect of that deployment is going to be. Can a smaller force beat a larger force? I think, see what the historical was. Historically, the Romans did manage to make its way back, but they had taken about 20% losses, which is enough to win this scenario. You can take that kind of losses. If the Carthaginians do significantly better, though, they can end up winning it. Okay, after an initial activation, trying to deploy the line, the Carthaginians realize they have to act fast here. If the Romans can deploy into a battle formation or anything like one, there's going to be a real problem. And these columns are still maneuverable in lines because they're front to back. So I'm doing a trumping with, well, all my leaders are pretty much the same, but one of my worst, well, except for my top back, one of my worst up here, Hamilcar, who's going to bring forward the skirmishers, try to harass that deployment and prevent it and get the cav into play as fast as I can. That succeeded, and now I have to remember who gets bypassed. Do all the Roman leaders get a bypass marker on them? I don't remember. You know, it's always been a little, I always have to look these things up every time that I roll. I think it's the case that all the lower ranked leaders, the tribune, the prefect, so they're not going to get momentums because of this. Yeah. Now, most games, I don't want to roll for the lesser leaders, and I don't want to bone them out of their next move. So I think I've got to kind of try to remember. Well, I don't use these counters very often. And there aren't, oh, there's one. There aren't a terrible lot of them. Okay, so this guy and this guy are not going to be able to get momentum on their moves. That also helps. And now I'm going to move forward with that line. So this is about the biggest effect the skirmishers have. They come forward, they can throw. This is using, you know, the proper skirmishing tactics rather than what I usually do. They come forward, they throw their stones, they probably miss, they fall back a space. They draw some fire from the velites or whatever, but those velites are screening the heavy units. One problem was the front column unit did end up being forced to throw its missiles. So it's out of missiles now. So what? It can't move again, and at least not easily. And there's nothing really engaging it. Nothing got an advantage out of knocking its missiles out. Of course, it's being pinned, so it can't reload by those. But it's a minor factor as far as I'm concerned. Removing one missile, yeah, it's an issue, but that's at most one hit on the enemy. So they've done almost nothing. They've caused one hit, they've caused a couple missile disruptions, and now they're the speed bump I'm used to them being. Can they get away? Yeah, they can kind of fall back and stuff, and I want to. There's no question. I want to try to break that line up or prevent it from happening. And here, without a solid infantry line coming in, I think the skirmishers are going to be more useful, which is why I'm actually trying to use them in this way. Finally. We'll see how the Romans do. The Romans split up the second column, sending half of it forward to smash into the skirmishers and the elephants. They kind of fell back into a single line, and it was mixed results. One skirmisher flew back, one elephant was actually routed in the aftermath, but we've got a routed Roman unit, and the line is mainly fallen back. The other half moved up in column. Now they can't get a momentum here, and they don't have much left. They have their velites, which they're going to want to use to try to form up a center, basically, and try to do what they can against that Carthaginian skirmishers. But if they break a hole in it, they've got to face the cav. Now this terrain isn't terribly good for cav either, because the cav, there's so many obstructions, etc. It's easy to build kind of defenses for your flanks by just running to good terrain, and we'll see how it kind of turns out. It looks interesting. Romans got a slight bonus. Bostar brought these infantry up. Oh, I forgot to roll this attack. Got to do that. And then got a die roll of doom effect, which gave a reactivation. And they used that to move that second column up and try to peel away some of those skirmishers. They sent one routing. They're just really trying to get their units into position before the cav can smack into them. We'll see how well that works, but I do have to take care of this because that Roman unit's in trouble being hit by that light. He meant to attack it and I just forgot about it. Good old Scipio used his command to punch through the center, knock some of those skirmishers out of the way, and he's doing pretty well there. He actually had a couple of cohorts to throw in as well, which definitely gave him a little bit more. He also repositioned his cav over to the flank. He's still got one here under that he can take command of again and let the prefect go back over here and try to defend against this. He just doesn't he has 3 cav units and he's facing 10. He just doesn't have enough to help defend things, but he's got a low frontage. If he can get his line in place, the cav are going to have a hard time doing much to him. But deploying in the face of adversity is kind of difficult. So Hasdrubal's in the midst of doing what Mago tried to do and couldn't, which was get a continuation and sweep around, hit the flanks. He didn't get his continuation, but Hasdrubal's good enough that he's been able to get that continuation, and he's slamming into the flanks of the Roman army here. It's probably going to do a lot of damage, and then he can flee because he's faster from the infantry here. And there we have the battlefield after the first turn. Not a lot happened actually. The cav failed to break that column. It's so dense with double units that it's really hard to actually crack. And we've seen this before, and I'm kind of uncomfortable about it. I guess it makes more sense because they are probably stacked one behind the other, which means they have more frontage to face, but it disturbs me somehow. We got a few routes coming, with the Romans, of course, kind of in danger of getting off the board. They have to try to rally their forces. Most of the point losses, though, have been from Carthaginians trying to rally their forces. They're only down 6, but this is a scenario without a lot of points in it. What did we say? Something like 45 for... I gotta write these down because they're not easy. 45 for Carthage, 63 for Rome. I'll write those down and keep track of the numbers. Okay, so here we have the Romans showing one of the problems with getting one of your leaders caught in combat. They can't get him out. None of these units can turn. None of them, and the leader can't give any orders except, hey, shock attack. Try to get me out of this by fighting. The only other way to get him out is for the overall leader to spend 2 commands to pull him out of there. So their first off leader is useless, and Carthage allowed them to take that without trying to bypass. Going over to the Cav prefect, they allowed him also to activate. Now he slammed in and drove off one of the Lancers and got a good flank attack on the light Cav, but his chance of succeeding on a momentum is low, and he failed it. So we're seeing, you know, the attempts of the Roman Cav to drive off some of that Carthaginian cavalry, but the truth of the matter is they're just going to get destroyed due to numerical inferiority. Alright, well, I think we're on to another Roman leader. Got a tribune back here who's kind of a problem too because of the command rules. He can only command regular Roman units or lines, and he can't really give a line command to anything. He could give a line command maybe to those. It's hard to tell, but he can't give a single line command the way he was able to before with them all in columns. So now the Romans are really facing leadership problems. And now Bostar or Mago with his Numidian lights slammed in and kind of wiped out the Roman cav. Well, not entirely. They hit one of them, knocked one, and actually chased it down here. There's no pursuit boxes in the Beneventum map. The way this is handled in the actual Beneventum battle is you just stop, and it's not clarified here, but I'm assuming I'd do the same with the fort in place. So you can actually destroy enemy cav without just chasing it off the map in the same way. I'm not sure how reasonable that is, but it seems to follow the same thought pattern as in the original scenario, so I'm going to keep it here. But when they hit the heavy Roman line units here, they're hitting them from the flank. Those units aren't going to be able to get away, but they are sturdy enough that they didn't just break on that first hit. It's going to take a while for the Numidians to finish them off, and the Numidians will take damage in doing so, making it harder to recover them. Mago was unable to get a continuation. I'm not sure how much he wanted when he certainly wanted to help this unit and maybe heal something, but his main strike was already done. Alright, now it looks like we're on to Bostar and or Hamilcar, unless the Romans want to try to trump in. But trumping in is dangerous. They could lose their entire activation off Scipio, so it's kind of a, do you want to lose something there? When they're taking away a guaranteed activation on a momentum roll, then it makes more sense. But in this case, it's kind of tough to decide that you're going to risk losing your last leader for the turn in order to deny somebody something they may not get. Well, under Scipio's activation, things looked a little better. Slammed some of his heavy infantry in, driving away some of the cav, pushed some more here. He's trying to push his way forward, break their center, at the same time kind of knocking out the threats to the flanks as best as he can. It still doesn't look pretty. When we look at losses for the turn, we're already seeing the Romans beginning to pick some up, but we also have an important cav unit for Carthage. Still have the main Carthaginian leader who might be able to rally some of those forces, or perhaps use his flanking forces to better effect. We'll see. So here's the position at the end of the round. Most of the things have either been rallied or chased off the map at this point. Not much changed. Hasdrubal was not able to get a lot of power in place. This guy didn't want to attack. Pushed a little bit in the front and knocked things back again in that main line. Now let's see what we got here. Some 17 Roman points and 7 Carthaginian. Which, you know, is clearly worse for the Romans right now point-wise, but they have more padding. So we'll see. Route-wise, there's a couple more pieces of skirmisher garbage running off the map. And then for the Romans, we've got this poor lost cohort trying to find its way back. Theoretically, they should just be running for the fort. But this scenario doesn't allow for that, so they're going to be trying to get back and not push through, which is weird. I mean, it makes sense that they wouldn't be trying to push through if there was any resistance, but right now, this is the most reasonable place to run to for safety, I think, or something in that general direction. But, a game can't cover everything. Alright, I'm going to load this one up, and we'll get started on the third turn or whatever very shortly.